Hi, my name's Cordy, and in this video I wanted to explore the reasons why you might want to consider the differences between placing your analog drive pedal in front of the HX Stomp versus in the loop. Now I was chatting with Alec Bourne, who is the de facto leader of the MIDI Mad Scientist Club on Facebook. Does loads of interesting stuff with MIDI and weird and wonderful sounds with the Helix stuff, so you might want to check that out if you're into that kind of stuff. We were talking about why it is that you might consider having this in front versus in the loop, and so this is the video that I wanted to put together, just kind of exploring what the differences might be. So this is the Origin Effects Revival Drive RD Compact Hot Rod Edition. Origin sent me this to do some videos with, so thanks for that. That's why there's the paid promotion thing. They've not asked me to make this specific video. It's just I'm doing stuff with the Revival Drive because I love Origin Effects. Anyway, so at the moment this is in front of the HX Stomp, and you'll see I've also got an arbitrator fuzz face in the loop in the first part of the HX Stomp signal chain. Now the reason for that is that effectively turns on the impedance circuit and it cuts it down to 10k, I think it is, which effectively would give you quite a dark tone. To demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is just plug straight in without the Revival Drive. So you'll hear, if I move this after the amp, I think you'll probably notice that there's a difference. So effectively what the Helix and the HX Stomp do is they've got this circuit called the guitar input impedance circuit, I think is what it's called. And that is an array of physical resistors that actually mimics what pedals like these do in terms of changing the guitar signal that goes through it. So they effectively change the impedance. So if you hear, once I... Hold on, I'll just show you again. So this is without the pedal. So you'll hear, I think, hopefully, depending on what buffer circuit is in your analog drive pedal that you try this with, hopefully you hear that brightness that was lost by going in and having the guitar input circuit doing its thing. This might be something that you might have noticed if you're not familiar with how this particular circuit works. So if you've got things like a tube screamer or the fuzz face at the very front of your signal chain and you plug your guitar in, even with them bypassed, they effectively do the same thing as mimicking your guitar going through a long cable or something like that and darken the tone essentially. So this might be something that you might notice if you plug your analog drive pedal straight into the front. You're effectively then taking the input impedance circuit out of action. So whether that's a good thing for you or not will depend on your needs or your whatever the word for it is. So that's one reason that you might find a difference when you plug a drive pedal into the front of your HX Stomp. You're effectively bypassing that input impedance thing. So if you've got a fuzz face, an arbitrator fuzz face at the front of your signal chain, and you bypassed it without an analog drive pedal in front of it, it would effectively darken your tone quite considerably, and that same effect is mirrored across some other effects pedals like tube screamers and to some extent or another. So that's one thing that your analog drive pedal in front is going to change. Now if you put your drive pedal in the loop, as I've done here, you'll find that you preserve the impact of that impedance circuit. So here we go. If I move that here, get a brighter tone. If I move that fuzz pedal, even though it's bypassed before the front of my signal chain, you get that darker tone. You can change this setting if you go into preferences, global settings, preferences, and you go across once here and you select the person, and then you scroll across the page. At the end you've got this preferences for the auto input impedance. You can change it, by default it will be set to the first pedal in the signal chain, so like in this case it's that fuzz face, and that is what is introducing that lower impedance. Or you can set it to first enabled, so therefore a bypassed fuzz face will no longer make an impact on the tone because it's bypassed. Or it shouldn't. So I think it's no longer making an impact. On the tone there, I think you're no longer getting that roll off. So if you're finding that you prefer the results of having the drive pedal in front of the HX Stomp, that's one impact that is changing potentially that you can then mitigate by setting that first enabled thing in the preferences. So you no longer then have the negative impact of, or potential negative impact of, having bypassed like fuzz pedals impacting your clean signal. So that's one thing you consider to do. So what I'm interested in now is whether it will make a difference if we record with the revival drive in the loop, and I'll just show you some of the options here. So at the moment we've got the revival drive just in the loop. I'm playing the looper pedal through it, and then after that I'll put the revival drive in front. Right, so something just quickly, another thing to bear in mind. So in this preset now I've got the fuzz and I've also got the effects loop, but I just wanted to show you the impact of this impedance thing. So at the moment I'm going straight into the HX Stomp and I've got the fuzz face on here. Now if I put this the other side of the loop, the impedance circuit actually does have an impact on the way that this fuzz kind of responds. And so if you want your guitar and your HX Stomp to do the job that they were designed to do with the fuzz, so the arbitrator fuzz is just one example of this. It's an extreme example, but some of the drive pedals and the components that are modeled in the HX Stomp, they also assign the impedance or the correct impedance match that would occur if it's the first in the chain. So here has a different tone to if I put it after the effects loop. Hopefully you can hear that, and that's because it's the first in the chain, so it's behaving like a virtual version of a real fuzz pedal, where once that's engaged or at the first part of your chain, it has a lower impedance, and that has a knock-on effect down the rest of the signal chain. So that's why potentially you might want to consider plugging straight into the HX Stomp and having your drive pedals in the loop. Say if you're using the virtual fuzz, you preserve what the ideal input impedance would be for that device as line 6 intended. So that's the things that I would do. I would set my preferences to first enabled so that I don't have the negative impacts of the input impedance circuit. I would consider chucking the drive pedal into the loop because there are definitely benefits, particularly if you're using a virtual fuzz. You potentially will want that input impedance circuit engaged for that. If you're going straight in with a pedal board, you've got pedals before your HX Stomp anyway, none of this particularly makes an impact. This is only the difference between plugging straight into the HX Stomp or plugging a drive pedal into the HX Stomp. If you've got other stuff in the signal chain, whatever you actually plug your guitar into is what is creating that input impedance relationship. So if you're not plugged into the HX Stomp, it can't really affect it. I tried to demo this with the looper pedal, and that was what I found with that. Obviously it's the impedance circuit essentially is working to load your pickups or something like that, and so if it's not seeing an actual guitar pickup, it doesn't react in the same way at all or really have any impact at all. I don't know exactly the science for that. Maybe I'll have that answer for you at some point, or someone can explain in the comments. Basically, if you're using some virtual fuzz pedals in the HX Stomp, there's a good reason for using the effects loop, the drives in the effects loop, and potentially there's going to be other models that are less of an extreme example, but you may find similar kind of result, maybe like a tube screamer or something like that. Those are sort of my kind of conclusions that I've come to from testing it today. If you've got your own kind of tips and stuff, feel free to leave them in the comments, but I just thought it's a little bit of an area which maybe is not super easy to understand. And up to this point I've not really thought about it too much, but I can see that there are some potential big things that will impact your tone here. Thanks for stopping by. If you want to like and subscribe, you could. I'll catch you in another video soon. Cheers.